The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, O Lord.
On the first day of the week, Mary of Magdala came to the tomb early in the morning while it was still dark, and saw the stone removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and told them, "They have taken the Lord from the tomb, and we do not know where they put him." So Peter and the other disciple went out and came to the tomb. They both ran. But the other disciple ran faster than Peter and arrived at the tomb first. He bent down and saw the burial cloths there, but did not go in. When Simon Peter arrived after him, he went into the tomb and saw the burial cloths there, and the cloth that had covered his head, not with the burial cloths, but rolled up in a separate place. Then the other disciple also went in, the one who had arrived at the tomb first, and he saw and he believed. For they did not yet understand the scripture that he had to rise from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So I know that you've had the experience before of hearing the alarm go off in the morning, and it seems way too early when it goes off, like you should have another couple of hours left. It's dark and it's warm and you just don't want to move. Even worse, those times you wake up an hour or even just a few minutes before your alarm and you look over at the clock and you're like, "You've got to be kidding me." Or even worse, it's Saturday, no alarm, and your eyes fly open at 5:15 in the morning, and there's not a chance that you're going to go back to sleep. I think annoying would be the best way to describe these experiences. As you know, in the 4 books of the Gospel, they show us a pretty clear picture of Jesus. We see his birth, we see his baptism, we see the first time he preaches in the synagogue, we see the miracles, the water turned into wine, the bread and the fish multiplied for thousands, the raising of the son of the Roman official. We see in all of its weirdness the raising of Lazarus, including the bandages falling away from him. We see Jesus cry. We see him pray. We see him walk on water. We see him walk with the disciples. We see him eat. We see in vivid detail this past week his violent passion and crucifixion. We see much of what he did in his short life. But there are parts that we don't see. More on that in a minute. You know, as human beings, I think that we face 2 significant temptations that, for me, have been highlighted by this coronavirus pandemic. The first one is that when we are young, we don't think that we will ever die. And I know if you are young and you're watching this Mass, because there are no young people here, but if you're young and you're watching this Mass, you're going to say to yourself, well, of course we're going to die. All human beings die. And I know you know that on an intellectual level, but trust me, a young person's day-to-day experience, the year-to-year experience, is an experience of each day getting stronger, getting taller, smarter, faster. Every day brings, or potentially brings, some improvement. And this greatly shapes your experience and your expectations for what's going to come tomorrow. The temptation is to think and to act as if there is no end to this life. And it brings on a certain recklessness. We may be tempted to be careless with the gift of life that God has given us. But this isn't the temptation that's been most highlighted for me. When we get older, And every day, every month, brings on not improvement, but decline. Maybe we get a little slower. Maybe we get a little more forgetful. Maybe we don't hear quite as well as we once did. Maybe we even get a little shorter. The great temptation is to think that, well, this is all that there is. Steady diminishment until there's nothing. Nothing even after this life. Much like with young people, our experience of this decline shapes our expectation for what's to come. Except, whereas young people are shaped by the experience of constant increase and improvement, the older we get, the more we are shaped by this trajectory of decrease. And so we subconsciously assume that, well, this is it. This is as good as it gets. The experience of our bodiliness informs this. This is it. And so if this is it, well, we've got to make the most of this. And we cling to life for dear life. And we must make something out of all of this ourselves. And then we're tempted to grasp desperately at this gift that God has given us. And we hold on to it too tightly. As I said, both of these temptations have become, to me, more apparent in this crisis. And sometimes age doesn't really matter which one you experience. We see it in those people who needlessly flaunt the social distancing practices that we see recommended. And we see it in those who, gripped by hysteria, act as if no one must ever get sick again. But this isn't a homily about the coronavirus. There is one very important part of Jesus' life that we don't see. It's the actual event of the resurrection. I mean, what happened in that moment? We're not there in the tomb, in the dark tomb, but imagine if we were. What must it have been like for Jesus to go from death to resurrected life? Did he just blink a couple of times and wake up as if from sleep and say, I didn't expect that? I'd like to think it was a bit more profound than that. I imagine that Jesus experienced some sort of, even in the midst of death, somehow, Jesus experienced some presence of God. Small at first, but growing in strength. And the presence got stronger, and there was a communication that Jesus sensed that came along with it, almost like an invitation. And so Jesus, as he had so many times before in the gospel, faced a temptation. Maybe it was like there in that tomb, the experience of the alarm clock going off too early on a Saturday morning. Jesus was like, come on, you've got to be kidding me. After all I've been through with the passion and the resurrection, there's more? I'm awake and there's more to come? I'm good. This is fine. Just let me be. His experience of death was most likely an experience of nothingness. No more pain, no more whips, no more nails. And the thought of waking would make for this temptation to be even stronger and understandable. Just let me be, he might have thought. This isn't so bad. But thank God, Jesus did what he consistently and faithfully did for his entire life. He trusted completely in God. He accepted this new invitation from God, even though it wasn't really clear what it was going to lead to. And he was not just brought back to life. He didn't just open his eyes and like, okay, well, I'm back. This was new. This was a new life, a fullness of being with God, transformed into a new being. And he would be with God forever, and he knew that. It was a new realization. God is stronger even than death. Jesus might have known it intellectually, but he just experienced it. Jesus experienced God's conquering of death. God can conquer even the old enemy of death. And he invites us to work alongside him in helping all people come to know him and to know this reality. God is not inviting us to give up or just be at peace with mediocrity. He's inviting us to his abundance, his unlimited life. And Jesus realized yet again that God's gifts that he gives us each day are more than enough. God's graces that he gives us each day are more than enough to accomplish God's work. And so what are we to do with this knowledge? God's gifts are enough. First, I think we should pray that we see these gifts each day more clearly, especially now. And then secondly, I'd suggest that we let our lives be shaped by this knowledge. Rather than being shaped by the deadening temptations of youth and old age, we can let ourselves be shaped by the knowledge of God's abundant graces. If we live today as if God's grace is enough, then tomorrow we will be even more excited to see what God has in store for us. If we put our full weight onto God's grace today, tomorrow will be filled with this unexpected joy and fulfillment. A new life, a new world, an abundance of joy, peace, and complete unity with God and one another.